Today's presentation is entitled Joy of the People, a working free play model by Ted Creighton, who's the Artistic Director for Joy of the People. Ted has had 30 years experience coaching youth, collegiate and high school soccer. He's 14 years as a youth club director of coaching with the Blackhawks in St. Paul, Minnesota. In 2009, he founded the non-profit Joy of the People, which promotes the idea of soccer free play as a way to build healthy kids and communities. In 2009, Joy of the People partnered with the city of St. Paul, Minnesota to take over the running of an unused recreation center and created Joy of the People Soccer Center. In 2012, Joy of the People provided more than 1,200 hours of safe, monitor-free play soccer time at no cost to the participants. In 2010, Ted established Powered by Joy, a youth sports model that promotes the importance of free play within the youth sports curriculum. Amongst many other qualifications, Ted has the NSCAA's Premier Diploma, and on his website he lists the 3 development priorities as competition, games are important, practice, training is more important than games, and play, free play is more important than practice. Welcome, Ted, to the presentation.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks, everybody, for listening in, and thanks to the NSCAA and Ian for allowing me to talk about this project, this labor of love. Joy of the People is a project that was started after working in many years as a director of coaching and seeing that after coaching them for 12 years, from 7 to 19, the kids still had something missing. And we kind of knew that it was free play, and we wondered how we could build free play into the environment. So we set up to sort of create, trying to get this thing working. Let's see, one click this way. There we go. And we've seen that one. Am I going the right way, Dave?
Yeah, if you use the other arrow, can you click forward with the other arrow?
Yeah.
I can
the right
on
arrow. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Let me just take over here, and I'll move the slides. Just give me an indication when you want to move them on.
Okay, we can move from there. Jurgen Klinsmann famously said we need to find a way to connect with inner city kids, and I think what he was saying, he was talking a lot about the basketball kids in the urban environments that do a lot of free play, and could we create soccer players like that? Go ahead, Dave, you can move forward. Like I said, it was 10 years as a director of coaching. Joy of the People comes from the nickname of Garrincha, who played with Pelé in the 1950s and 60s, and he was called Alegria de Povo, Joy of the People, because he was so much fun to watch. We formed a partnership with the city of St. Paul, and all of a sudden we got this big park, and in 2009 we opened it up, and one kid showed up. Go ahead, Dave, I'll try it myself. So the idea was based on the idea that players are made, not born, and this has sort of become very popular these days, and the idea is that everything is kind of a learning experience. And the 10,000-hour rule, as Erickson and Gladwell look at it, is a doable thing that all these great players that we've known have put in that time. And so we want to look at, okay, 10,000 hours, how can we put in that time? It basically comes down to 1,000 hours a year between the ages of 9 and 19. This is kind of what the greatest players have done. Go ahead. So if we look at normal, and I was part of this problem of a sort of 14, 15 elite team, we divided the time into 3 segments: competition, training, and sort of all the other stuff, which we call, in this one, the foundation of free play and deliberate practice. In a pretty advanced elite U14 team in this country, we'll put in about 150 hours a year of competition. That's a lot. They'll put on 200 to 300 hours a year of training. And in Minnesota, that kind of training takes place in domes, winter domes, outside fields. It's very expensive. And we do the best we can. But then how many hours are put in for free play and deliberate practice? Almost no attention is paid to that. That's the stuff that's outside of those practices and competitions. Go ahead, Dave. So the Powered by Joy model is a model that balances competition, training, and the foundational elements to create, around 1,000 hours a year. But it's never 1,000 hours a year. It's just sort of a balanced training. But sort of look at 1,000 hours a year as a goal. And this idea came to me when I was studying in Brazil, where I would see that they didn't really train that much, and they had very little games, but there was all this other stuff that was going on. Kids were playing on their own one-on-one. They were playing at every single picnic that the parents had. Every cabin has, or C2 has, a little mini soccer field. There are, in the Sao Paulo area, futsal courts everywhere. So you eat lunch and you go to play futsal. They're playing at recess at school. They're playing all the time. So by doing this, they're using that time to sort of build those hours and create a foundation on which to build the other parts of their training. Go ahead, Dave. So if you look at any practice or any time a kid is with a ball or with friends, everything sits on a continuum. On one far end would be free play, which is fun, immediate. It's kids running around, tickling, playing tag, goofing around with the ball. Hardly looks like anything at all. Does not even look like it's helping them. The very far end is something we have what's called deliberate practice. And a lot of the studies have focused on deliberate practice, which is hard, focused, difficult, meant to create better performance, and it's not necessarily for immediate needs, it's for later. And a lot of attention, and for good reasons, has been focused on deliberate practice. However, when people look at team sports, group sports, complex sports like basketball, hockey, and soccer, what they're finding is something very different. They're finding that there isn't 1,000 hours a year of deliberate practice. There's only about 400. And the other 600 or so are coming from free play and other forms of practice. Go ahead, Dave. So if we look at this sort of lost foundation, how do we fill it up? And there's really 2 ways to do it. There is the sort of group play model, which has been very popular, street-style soccer in soccer. And we use 2 good examples from American basketball. Larry Bird was a real loner and focused on working on his own very deliberately, almost a deliberate practice setting in the foundation period. He would be alone with a basketball, shooting over and over and over. He once said he didn't think anybody practiced more than him. Magic Johnson, on the other hand, hated to practice on his own. But where he grew up at the Ann Arbor basketball courts, there was always fights going on. The fights would break out, and everybody would get mad and leave Magic Johnson with just him and a basketball. And he hated to practice on his own. So he would go home too. He had to figure out a way of how to keep the group together. So he learned a couple things that he's now famous for. He learned how to smile. He learned how to pass. These things keep the group together. He became a social genius. By the time he entered the NBA, he was a social leader who led his team, his rookie season, in the NBA title. Larry Bird was a technical genius. No one had ever seen a 6'11" guy shoot threes like that. He could dribble, he could pass. It took him a while socially to build those skills to create a better group, but he eventually did. Magic Johnson came to the league without being technically superior. He needed to work on his free throws, his shooting. But they both had those things they could work on, and they used that foundation to advance themselves. How do we distribute deliberate practice and free play? In the current model, the way it is right now, deliberate practice is emphasized from a very early period, from 5, 6, 7 years old, 9 years old. We put people on teams. We say to kids, focus, work hard. Everything comes from the coach. And free play is given very little time. And we tell kids, hey, you're a good player. You should go be working on your own. But we don't build it into the curriculum. Go ahead, Dave. So the Powered by Joy model looks at how we distribute free play and deliberate practice. When we're young, when we're 9 years old, the yellow bar is close to 1,000 hours a year. And these are just goals. These are just best practices of what other greats have done of free play. And very, very little deliberate practice. As they grow older, the deliberate practice increases and the free play decreases. When they hit that crossroads at 15, 16, 17, we have a point where deliberate practice, the work, outpaces the free play, the play of kids. And a lot of kids have trouble at that point. They say, hey, Dad, soccer's not fun anymore. But let's really look at that. The whole process is fun. Fun as a kid is free play. Play, goof around, immediate, with your friends, right? Not focused on performance. Focus for adults at the very end, at 19, 20, 21, is on what you're good at. If you're a painter, it's working on a painting. If it's a lawyer, working on a draft proposal. If it's a mechanic working on a car. If it's a teacher working on a practice plan. It's what's working, that's what we're good at. Fun for David Beckham is no longer free play. Fun is the deliberate practice, the hard work, the thousands of free kicks to get better. But fun for a kid is not that. Fun for a kid is goof around, play. And so the whole travel is fun. Piaget said, play is a child's work. And we say, work is the adult's play. Okay, so this is sort of a best practice model that you'd go through in a sort of developmental curriculum. Go ahead, Dave. There's a very interesting study in hockey that looked at 4 players specifically. There was a group of players, but 4 players specifically, without being drafted, they were able to keep going and join NHL teams. And what they did was if you look at the blue line, that's the deliberate practice. They were able to continue with that hard work. And they put those hours in, and they eventually all made professional NHL teams. Now, if you think about what they're going through, nobody is telling them they're any good. They're sort of out of the system, but they continue working at it. And we look at people like that and we say, we know that people who do that hard work once they get 14, 15, they will make it. But the question is, what is the motivation that keeps them working very hard? What do they have that other people do not have? And Soberlac looked at these kids and looked at their counterparts, the ones who quit and didn't make it. And what he found, looking back, if you look at the gold line, that is the sort of free play that they put in as kids. And the kids that were able to continue working and advancing through that tough, difficult, performance-related, deliberate practice, those kids, was it because they were the best? No. Was it because they were the most talented? No. Was it because they were the fastest? No. Best skaters? No. Parent support? No. The one thing those kids had in common was they were the ones who put in the most time in pond hockey as kids. So Powered by Joy, you can move one ahead, Dave. Powered by Joy model is really about the free play as kids, providing time, space, energy, and places for kids to play, powers us for the hard work as adults. No matter, I mean, that is a really powerful message, whether it's in school or whether it's in life, soccer. This has been, if you look at great players, this is the model that they've followed over and over and over again. And this is really what we want to promote. Go ahead, Dave. So in this guiding principle, we looked at, okay, how do we shape an environment like this? So we have this rec center, what do? We looked at great free play environments of the past. In Minnesota, we are blessed with, everybody talks about this famous area in St. Paul where the kids just played pond hockey all day long in the 50s. And they won numerous high school titles under Johnson High School with these kids who had just these amazing sort of different skills. They didn't look like anybody else. They were all different, but they were all skillful. All great players have come up in this sort of environment. Zidane, Maradona, Cruyff. And it seems like they spent a lot of their formative years without the pressure of deliberate practice. So 1950s East Side Hockey, looking at great players. The 1960s East Side Hockey team, for instance, produced 7 members of the 1960 gold medal hockey team. It produced Herb Brooks, who won obviously coached the 1980, gold medal Olympic team, and we're still feeling the effects of that sort of pond hockey environment today. This is a picture of me and of the president of Joy of the People with Mario Zagallo, who was part of, I think, the world's greatest free play environment, which was in Brazil in the 50s and 60s. Zagallo was a free play guy who didn't go professional until both Fogarty was 16. And these sort of skills that Brazil had in the 50s, 60s, and 70s when they were so far ahead of the world were because they had that wonderful culture. Go ahead, Dave. So what we try to do is create cogent, inviting, fun environments. So we have a building, we have a gym floor, we try to put music in there. We shape the games to what we have. We use every single space. Here in the bottom left corner is a warming room that used to be where kids put their skates on, and we use it to play one-on-one and barefoot games. We have on the upper right, we have 10 giant inflatable courts that we put up to create fun spaces for comprehensible places for kids to play. We use our tennis courts. We use we have a sand court. We just try to create all these weird environments to create adaptable play. Go ahead, Dave. And when I studied in Brazil, my mentor said, hey, in America, you guys are crazy. You guys have all this thousands and thousands of dollars of speed training equipment. 2 things you just need to know. Change the ball, change the surface. I think we've had, I'm not sure if we skipped one day, but that's okay. Here we have something called a pickleball court, which we are building. It is sort of a roly-poly field that really projects play. It was invented by an artist in Sweden with the idea being life is not fair. Soccer's not fair. Why would the field be exactly the same? Which they never really are. The ball never bounces the same way twice. So one of the things that we run into when we build small site spaces is that the adults really take them over right away, and there's really no place for the kids just to play. But the pickleball court is never going to be taken over by an elite 14-year-old team. Adults will never, form a formal scrimmage on there. It's always going to be a place for kids to experiment and learn. Go ahead, Dave. So some of the things that we've learned, and we are still learning, and the NSCAA and also U.S. Youth Soccer and their youth soccer license are really on top of these things, is that the games are really, really important. Torbert, especially of those ideas of expansion, equalization, and interaction, are really keys to great free play environments. People are allowed to participate no matter what their skill. They're allowed to get better no matter if they're the best player or the worst player. They're allowed to have fun. They're allowed to challenge themselves. And there's this ton of interaction between diversities of skills, experience, ages, genders. These things, and everything that we do in U.S. soccer kind of goes against that. And again, I was part of the problem. We need to think of ways to get our 14s playing with our 9s, with our girls playing with our rec kids, all that together. Go ahead, Dave. This is a really important part of Joy of the People, and something that we really discovered is that it is very important for kids to play. Baby polar bears wrestle with each other to prepare themselves for the difficult, battling that they're going to have to do as adults. But creating great spaces and places for kids to play creates kind of a social intelligence. And that could be missing in sort of our only deliberate practice only environment. Again, we talked about the interaction of ages. And this really, Krashen's hypothesis on language learning focuses on how do kids learn language. And we really look at this at Joy of the People as we look at sport. In language, there's really, Krashen's theory is that there's really two things. There's learning and there's acquisition. Acquisition is being in and around a wonderful environment of that language. Not learning, not working at it, just being around it, absorbing it. While learning is the rules, techniques, strategies, and skills. And his theory is acquisition, to master a language, acquisition needs to come before learning. So Joy of the People free play is about acquisition. And if we say, hey, and we've said this to kids, you got to focus. You're learning right now. You got to focus. And David Goleman has a new book on how to really get things out of deliberate practices. You've got to focus. But the opposite is true of acquisition. There should be no focus. We shouldn't be. It doesn't tend to work if we focus on performance. If our kids do free play to get better, they don't get better as the kids who just do it because it's fun. It's really something we have to unlearn. We're location-centric. You need to find a place where kids can come and watch, be a part, have food, water, shelter, where they can sort of create their own destiny. And just remember that it's always, always fun. We try to get our parents off of their chairs and set up an inflatable court for them to play on as well. Go ahead, Dave. Technically what we found, these are just, anecdotal, I can't test them, but I've been watching a lot for many, many years, is extreme comfort with the ball, like they're the best friend. They learn from each other. They copy from each other. So some kid will come up with a good move. Everybody's doing it 2 days later. Dribble techniques. We see kids who go right to goal without cutting, without very little wasted body movement. There's very much less hustling, fighting. It's very like they know how to take the ball away from each other easily without sort of the grinding and hustle. And it's very efficient. Finishing techniques, I could spend 3 days talking about that, but basically because we're using different balls that allow everybody to play good goalie and playing to big goals, which is important in Brazil, everybody can finish a lot of different ways. Go ahead, Dave. Tremendous amount of cohesiveness. If you want to keep kids in your club and create retention, I would say this sort of strategy is amazing. We have kids who play a lot of clubs, but they still want to be there all the time. Just studies have shown that kids who do free play are much better decision makers on and off the field, and they really enjoy the game for the right reasons. They're not so much worried about the next tournament. They just want to play and learn. Go ahead, Dave. Things that run into trouble. Too much competition. Winners and losers. Sometimes we found if kids try to win the games too much, those kids don't improve as much as the kids who don't care. Remember, acquisition is sort of lack of focus, very divergent thinking. If you schedule it too much, if you separate the genders, and it just doesn't have that right feel. So it's best to open it up, let everybody come, and sort of work it out as you go. How it can help your club. It provides more simple things like setting a space aside at your practice field and saying, we have 4 hours of team practice here, but this little space here for 4 hours is going to be only about non-structured play. Kids, little kids, all can go and learn there and play together. You get way more time on task. Kids can play you can practice for 75 minutes, but kids can play for 4 hours, 5 hours. If you provide the other things that they need, they'll surprise you. They're checking in and out, so it's very, very safe. The doctor once told me, hey, Ted, do you have any injuries here? I say no. He said, it's interesting that studies have shown that in those type of unstructured environments, kids don't get injured because they know when to step out. Remember that the play as kids powers us for the hard work as adults. So the opposite of hard work is sort of like just let them go. Let them figure out the pace. Don't worry about the tempo. Emotional and social growth and a tremendous social cohesion together as kids. Go ahead, Dave. I would say make it a priority. Think about, we're not geniuses. Think about ways that you can build it into your practices. Make it safe and secure. Invite kids. It never should be a requirement. Experiment with different balls. Watch, learn. Let the kids tell you what they like. Go ahead, Dave.
So, excuse me. Thanks, Ted. That was great. So before we go on to questions, if you have questions, please start sending them in at this point, and we'll take as many as we can in the next 5 minutes or so. As participants in this webinar series, you can also receive a free Play Like Manchester United, magazine that is available from our partner Soccer Coach Weekly, and that will be available to you by email over the course of the next few days. Excuse me. As I transition to the questions, Ted, one thing that comes up in my mind is that nowadays a lot of parents are taking their kids from one sport or activity to another. So it's not that they don't do anything anymore, it's that they're actually doing many more organized activities. So is it really appropriate for us to still think in the same way as we did 10, 15, 20 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, I lettered in 5 sports in high school. I played every sport there was, but I was unstructured in all those 5 sports. So I think yes, if there's not enough time, they're not going to be able to do it. But if you are providing deliberate practice for your kids and not providing free play, then I think you'll maybe just competing with those other sports and just hurrying them along as well. I think at some point we realized we have to do what's right. So we opened up the free play and we just saw what would happen. Now we are getting kids who spend 20 hours a week doing free play, but we get kids who just come 1 hour a week. But those kids break down the door to get in. So the kids are being driven to ballet, to piano, but they're breaking down the door to get to soccer. And so I think it is really about lining up your priorities, at least our priorities, and then letting them determine what kind of hours they put in.
Thomas asked a question about the inflatable fields and wants to know where you can get them.
We had these designed and made in China. There are numerous manufacturers that make them. It was a long process to get it right. We do sell them at very, very little profit with the idea of providing clubs an inflatable court that they can have in their backyard, or we have different sizes backyard, or their club, to provide more free play time for kids. It's part of our mission. So anybody who contacts us can find out about that.
Sam is actually sending a question in from the UK, and he asks, in terms of free play aspect in England, we're very careful around age group, and especially with affiliate club environments. How do you get around this to ensure that the environments are positive, safe, and within the national governing body criteria?
Well, that's a great question. I'm not sure I'm quite understanding it. Can you elaborate a little bit, Dave? Are you getting that?
No, I'm not getting the elaboration, but I believe it's, excuse me, it's actually finding the opportunity to move players from one age group to another in a safe way.
Well, again, what we found are sort of 2 levels of free play, and the delineation is pretty clear. Kids that are just goof around, play, it almost looks like a waste of time. But they're learning, they're playing, they like it. We sometimes do, hey, winners move up, losers move down. We almost always do that, 5, 6 courts going on. But when some of our better players, we say, hey, the adults are playing, would you like to go play over here? A lot of them say no. Adult free play, or it almost moves from sort of kid free play to serious free play. Serious free play is no smiles, hey, we're trying to win. It's really about the win, it's about the game itself. Free play for kids is about experimentation. And so there seems to be a transition that happens. And so we sort of let kids decide. But I would definitely say allow kids to stay in that lower period, in that acquisition period, as long as you can. Don't try to push them along into the adult game or too serious too soon.
We'll take 2 more. One from Gilbert says, does unstructured mean unsupervised or simply supervised without detailed control?
Correct. Great question. If you look at the continuum, free play is no adult supervision. So does Joy the People get to total free play on the very left-hand side of the continuum? No. We stay out of it, though. We are only there. We don't even resolve conflicts. But if there's a bad problem, we separate those kids and we take care of it. But we supervise. We make sure there's an adult at every single free play environment to make sure everything's safe, no kids wandering off. But perfect free play is what happens in the backyard, at the neighborhood court, away from adult supervision. And we're trying to give kids the skills to be able to do that.
And then from Jonathan asks, in the ideal situation, there would be a futsal court in every corner, but that isn't the culture in America. How do you get the funding to keep free play in a futsal court, for example, open?
That's a great question. What we do at our center, which is a city park, is we provide paid programs. So we'll do a morning camp where we focus on shooting, and then at 12 o'clock we open up for free play from 12 to 3, and we do that every day during the summer. So the paid programs provide free play time for kids, so kids can come and it sort of is very cyclical. So kids who come for free play say, well, I want to learn that, and they want to come and do a paid program. And then the kids who do the paid program want to stay and just play. So look at innovative ways to get support from your cities, maybe convert unused or underused tennis courts areas and see if you can convert that into a space. U.S. Soccer Foundation has great grants that are available and want to help urban environments. Look at innovative ways like inflatable courts or spaces that would, with just a little bit of construction, would make a great court that you could play in. I encourage everybody just to, it's worth it. So take the time to try to build it.